All right. Welcome to the NSDA, the National Skill Development Association. My name's Dwayne Blais, and we're going live here on YouTube. So this is the first time I've done it on YouTube. We've done it on Instagram before and on Facebook, which has been really good and really fun to interact with some of our coaches and parents and hockey players. So today we're going to talk just quickly about a couple questions that I've received over the last couple weeks in regards to skill development, obviously, but hockey players, some parents, different things that I've come across just in being in the rinks and talking to parents, but also obviously working with kids and coaches and seeing some of the things, some of the pitfalls or some of the things that we can maybe do better for myself as a coach or any of the coaches out there that are working with young teams or young players. And as a dad as well, I think like any parent, no matter what the sport is, you want your kids to do well at it. And if there's anything that you can take away from this or talking to other people, and myself included, I take away stuff all the time on little tips and little tricks that maybe I can use to help my son or daughter get a little better at whatever sport they're playing. So we'll start off. I've got a couple questions that have come in. And the first one here is from Daryl, and the question was basically fitting equipment. So looking at shin pads in this question here, but shin pads and elbow pads, how do you know when they're getting too small or if they are too big? And one of the things, easy way, especially is if they're getting too small, you're going to see on how they fit. So if they're not fitting well, if they're not covering the knee, then you've got a problem. So you want to make sure that that kneecap is covered. So when you do buy shin pads, you want to make sure that that kneecap's covered, and you want that shin pad to go all the way down to basically the bottom of where their skate's going to do up. So if they wear their shin pad over top of their skate, then that's going to be important to to have that shin pad over top of their skate and not sitting right on the laces so it's pushing up too much, but just having a little bit of leeway there so the straps fit well and keep that shin pad in place. If you have to use tape, that's fine as well. But making sure that it goes from obviously covering the kneecap all the way over the knee, all the way down to below the shin, almost to the ankle. So when you have your skate on, the best way to fit it is you could do it in the store just by looking at the shin bone and how that shin pad fits. And every shin pad's numbered. So they go, 8-inch shin pad, 9-inch shin pad, 10-inch shin pad, and they kind of get bigger. So you can always look at what your son or daughter's in now and go up a size or two. Or if you're just fitting a player for the first time, then looking at how it fits on their shin and making sure obviously it covers the knee and then it goes all the way down just above their foot basically for that. Elbow pads as well, same thing. You want to make sure the most important piece there is covering your elbow pad or your elbow, sorry. And now you want, especially young kids, it's not as important, but as they get older, you want to make sure that they have something that's going to cover their forearm as well. A lot of the elbow pads come with a strap up top here. The elbow pad would sit on the elbow, and then you'd have a little piece, almost a cuff here, with Velcro that would cover that forearm place if there's any sticks or anything or pucks that hit them there, that they're covered off, and that makes him or her's elbow and obviously forearm feel a little bit better. But for the elbow pad, you want to make sure it sits in that elbow socket, so right in there, right in that elbow. It's not able to move around. If it's able to move around, you want to make sure that that's secured. If the elbow pad's too big and the Velcro isn't doing up, then you may want to downsize that elbow pad, or you can tape it a little bit. Especially with young kids, you want to make sure there's not a lot of slipping, because once they get sweaty and they're moving around and that elbow pad slips, then they fall, and then that's when they're going to be hitting their elbow on the ice. And as we all know, that does not feel good. The other thing too to keep in mind is even wearing a long sleeve shirt underneath. So a lot of times players will wear long sleeve shirt under, and that'll help keep that elbow pad a little bit more in place, a little more secure on their elbows. So I hope that helps, Daryl. But that's a good question. Another one was fitting a stick properly. So how do I know what stick should my player be in? And I think it's really important for young players to use appropriate sticks. So whether they're a novice player, let's say like a 5, 6, 7, 8, using a junior stick, which is a smaller shaft size, which is huge for how their hands fit on that stick. And also the blade's going to be a little bit small, a little bit more manageable. So it's not a big blade like you'd see in a senior stick. And then as players go up in levels, then you go to that intermediate size stick, which would be a little bit bigger shaft size, a little bit bigger blade size. The flexes go up a little bit, and then into a senior as they get older. And how do you know when to switch? You'll know by two things. Your players are going to outgrow that size of stick, meaning you can't find a stick that's going to fit them. And number two, the flex. It gets a little bit too whippy, and you're going to see players bending those sticks a little bit too much and not having much control in their shots. So you want to make sure putting players in an appropriate stick size is huge. We do see players, like novice players, using senior sticks, which I don't agree with it. I don't think a young player should be using a big stick for two reasons. Number one is they have small hands. So you put a player with a senior stick with small hands, it's a more cumbersome stick, more cumbersome shaft. So you want to make sure that their hands are fitting nicely around the stick, so that's more control. They have better control in their stick handling and things like that as well. And making sure that they're not, that blade isn't too big either. So you want to be able to control that blade and make sure that you know what you're doing with that blade, whether you're taking shots or stick handling or making plays with the puck. And then the other thing that we see a lot is that stick length. And when players or parents are going to cut that stick down, when a player first gets a stick, make sure that stick is somewhere between the nose and your chin area on your body. So if a player's at the store and they don't have their skates on, you can have them stand on their tippy toes. You get up on their tippy toes and make sure that stick is in between their nose and their chin, somewhere in here. As the stick gets lower, that forces players to bend down a little bit more and play in a little bit more of an awkward position. And if they're way too high, then it's really cumbersome and it's hard to handle pucks because that stick is way too high on their body. So making sure that stick's in a good spot, kind of between that nose and chin area. So I hope that helps. Seeing that I'm old, I'm going to be using my glasses on and off here a little bit. So another question I had, moving into skills a little bit here. So that's on the equipment side. If you have any other questions, go ahead and fire away. One of the questions that came in, just actually came in now, was the difference between competitive players. So basically, what is the biggest, what do coaches look for in competitive players? So anybody that's going into tryouts, and I know in certain areas tryouts are coming up here in the spring, in other areas tryouts are going to be in the fall. What do coaches look for in competitive players? I think one of the biggest things that's the easiest controlled by players is work ethic. And a lot of, when you're at tryouts, how can you stand out from a crowd, or how can you stand out from those other 20, 30, 40, 50 players that are trying out? One of the easiest ways is just putting in a hard effort, working hard, back checking hard, skating hard, things like that. Another thing, obviously, that's going to be highlighted in tryouts are skills. So what's their skating ability like? How are they? And a lot of times you're going to see coaches set up drills around cones, or skating forward to backwards, or side stopping, or maybe a little bit more competitive as you get older, like transitioning and opening up for passes and things like that. So your skills are really important, obviously, being able to skate. And then puck skills are huge. So is a player able to pick up a pass properly? Is a player able to give passes that are flat? Are pucks bobbling around? Are they getting pucks on their stick and they're blowing up? So those are all little things that are going to stand out at tryouts for competitive players. Are you able to catch a pass? Are you able to control a puck? Are you able to skate with a puck? And then another big highlighted one, obviously, is shooting. So when players are going in on net, are they taking good shots? Are they always trying to deke the goalie? Can they shoot the puck? Can they elevate the puck? Little things like that. And those are things I know right now, if you're going into tryouts in a couple weeks, it's hard to get that stuff honed in. But for players that maybe have this summertime to get ready for tryouts in the fall, those would be the three main things that I would suggest on skill is skating. Obviously, being comfortable skating, things like that, being good on your edges, being able to control a puck. And you don't have to have crazy hands and toe drag players, but just being able to make passes, picking up passes, making sure your blade's cupped when you're receiving a puck or giving a pass. And then obviously shooting, being able to shoot, a good strong wrist shot or a slap shot or whatever you're working at, depending on what level you're at. And then the one thing that every player can do if they want to is work hard and just skating hard during tryouts and things like that. One quick suggestion for parents out there, if you're going to a competitive tryout, let's say it's AA, AAA, or spring team, whatever you're doing, one thing I suggest to players a lot of times is get rid of the logos on your helmet. Maybe you played A hockey last year, you're going to try out AAA, or maybe you played House League and you want to try to make that A team. Get rid of any decals or anything that represent where you played the year before, because a lot of times we're all human. Coaches will see, oh, that player played House League last year. I can tell by the stickers on his helmet. Get rid of that stuff. I'd also suggest just wearing general socks and general t-shirts, meaning don't wear your team colors from last year. If you're going to try out for a AAA team or a AA team or an A team, don't wear your B socks from last year's team. Just wear white socks or black socks and a black jersey, something simple, or a hockey school jersey or whatever that you have. Everyone's got a ton of jerseys now, but try to just blend in as much as you can, because the first impression is going to be very important. And if a coach sees that a certain player played B hockey last year, they're going to tend to judge that player as a B hockey player. If they have no idea where he played and the first couple plays you make are, whoa, this kid looks really good, right away that'll change how that first perception is or that first interaction is. So I think it's important to go and try to be as blank slate as you can. So get rid of logos, decals on your helmet, things like that. Wear your wear just neutral colors, so you're not really representing anybody. You're trying out for this team, and you're basically able to blend in a little bit just on looks and appearance alone. Another question on skill was, how can I help my young players stop? So this is from Melanie, who's I think got a young boy, and trying to teach them how to stop properly. We have a ton of videos on this as well at the National Skill Development Association, but one of the easiest things for players to stop is similar to riding a bike. Once you get it, you have it, but it's really hard to get it. So at the beginning, I think breaking it down as simple as possible. We try to break it down, and everyone has their own way of doing it, but the way we do it is we break it down into 3 simple steps. So if a player's working on stopping, I really recommend coaches beginning really slow. Don't have players come in full speed and try to stop, because it's hard enough as it is, and now you add speed to it, it makes it that much harder. So coming in really, really slow, and step 1 would be simply just turning their head. So whatever direction they're going to be turning in, you want them to turn their head. And then secondly, you want them to turn their shoulders and their stick. And then third, they're going to turn their feet. And make sure that their feet aren't too wide or aren't too close together. You want those feet about shoulder distance apart and not on their inside edges. If a player's on their inside edges, what's going to happen is when they go to make that stop, they're just going to end up turning on their edges. If they're in a neutral, so on both their edges, their inside and outside edges, in that neutral, now it's easier to slide your skates or move your skates on the ice. So when a player's coming in, again, turn your head, then your shoulders and your stick. So step 1's head, step 2, shoulders and stick, and then step 3 would be turning your feet quickly. And I would start that really, really, really slow. And once they get that feeling, then you can add a little bit of speed to it, a little bit more speed, a little bit more speed, and then eventually they're going to catch it. And once they catch it, they're good, right? Now it's just practicing it and mastering it. And they're always going to have one side they're really good on and one side that they're weaker on. And really, really important for coaches to make sure that they're working on their weaker side as well as their strong side. So if you're having a player do a drill, make sure that you're incorporating a left side stop and then a right side stop. Or in one sequence, they're doing the right side stop, and the next time they go through, they have to do the left side stop. Really, really important, because every player, myself included, is going to want to stop on their strong side as much as they can, especially until they get that weaker side better, then it's not a problem. But you want to really hammer that weaker side in order for them to improve that stopping. Another one I had here from Ty with just regards to skills was backward skating. And backward skating can be challenging a little bit, obviously, for young players. But when you first starting off with young players, even if they're just shuffling, so if they have their feet kind of together and they're just kind of shuffling their hips and moving and kind of wiggling back and getting a little bit of momentum going backwards, that's perfect. And then as they get better and as they kind of understand their body and their body language is a little bit better as far as controlling their upper and their lower body, then I'd have them, making C's. And even if you go 2 feet at a time, bringing it out and then back together, out and back together, it's perfect. And having them go in that backwards motion. And one thing, a good cue for young kids is pushing your toes out and then pulling your heels in. So if these are my feet, my toes are at the front, my heels at the back, you push your toes out and then you pull your heels in. And that's going to make that C pattern for them. And then once they start to get that, then you can isolate one leg at a time. Because just like stopping, they're going to have one leg that's stronger than the other, or one leg that's more comfortable than the other. And you want to make sure that they're able to work both legs. So using one leg at a time, where this leg would stay stationary and my outside leg would be pushing together and pushing together. So pushing that toe in and pulling that heel in, and then working the other one. And these pushes are not going to look very nice to begin with, but as they go through it, especially as you isolate one leg at a time, they'll start to pick it up pretty quick, and that backward skating will definitely improve as they're practicing it. One other one here from Bergie was puck handling. How to control a puck better. And this goes for all ages, but the biggest thing when you're controlling a puck is cupping the blade of the stick. And that's going to all come from your top hand. So if I have my hands on a stick like this, my top hand, my bottom hand, our top hand is going to be our control hand. That's the hand that's going to control my blade as I'm rotating my hand back and forth. My bottom hand is going to be my power hand that's going to add power to that stick as I'm shooting, passing, making plays. So my top hand, when I roll it forward, is going to cup my blade to the forehand side. And as I roll it back, it's going to open my blade, so cupping it on the backhand. So as we're stick handling, we want to rotate that hand back and forth to cup that blade as we're handling the puck back and forth. So as we're stick handling, very, very important for players to first of all have their hands in a good position, so they're not too tight, not too far apart, and their hands are in a good spot on their stick. And then making sure that top hand is moving a little bit in order to allow that blade to cup over the puck on the forehand and backhand. Whether they're shooting, passing, controlling the puck, having a cupped blade is going to be huge for keeping pucks flat, getting more power on their passes or on their shots, and handling the puck better when they're stick handling. So I hope that helps, but big thing, if you can take anything away or teach anything to those young players with stick handling, is keeping that blade cupped. One thing too with that is that top hand, that control hand, we want to make sure that when we're looking, so let's say this is my hockey stick, terrible use of a hockey stick here, but this is my stick, this is the bigger part of my stick and the skinnier part of my stick. So if I was looking down my stick down here, my blade would be down at the bottom. A lot of players end up turning their hand over here. So when they go to turn their blade over, that blade opens wide open when they go to turn it. So making sure that the V of their hand, so right here, is right in that small part of their stick. So they're holding their stick like this with that V here, and don't let them rotate their hand to the bigger part of their stick. And if you grab a hockey stick, you know exactly what I mean. Making sure that that V of their stick is right down the skinny part of their hockey stick and not on the thicker part. And that's another big piece on how players over rotate sometimes, and they get caught with that blade wide open because their top hand, that control hand's not placed properly on their stick. So something to keep in mind if you work with young players and how to hold a hockey stick properly. Young players are going to find any way that's comfortable for them. So the more that we can instill good habits, the better they're going to be longer term as they're playing and practicing and trying to get better at hockey for sure. All right, and one thing I wanted to get into as well is some tactics. I had a lot of questions about team tactics, and with younger players, I think team tactics are difficult to cover, meaning a forecheck, we're going to work a 1-2-2, or we're going to work 2-1-2, so 2 players in, 1 player high, 2 defensemen. It's a lot easier to teach players structure than it is tactics at young ages. And what I mean by structure is simple things like attacking the offensive zone or playing defense in the D zone. So those are the 2 things I'm going to go over, is attacking the offensive zone and playing in the D zone. And this is more for younger players. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 when they start getting into full ice games, and they're playing, more of a structured game of hockey. Looking at how do we teach them how to play properly when they're driving into the zone and when they're playing out. So if we look at our rink here, we've got our offensive zone here. And if we broke the ice up into simple kind of lines like this, so kind of down the dot line here, which we've all done, even setting up pylons, kind of here and here to separate our lines. If you had players attacking that zone, so the drill could be as simple as starting off on the blue line and just coming in and attacking that zone. Ideally with young ages, you want to get that puck to the outside, so moving it down the board. So if the puck started in the middle, we'd move it to the side here, so making that pass here. This player would skate into it, and now we've got these 2 players coming in here. And as a coach, 100% up to you on what you want to do, but there's 2 good options here. Number 1 is the player closest to the puck goes to the net, and you see this a lot in the NHL where it's called a middle lane drive. That middle player will go to the net. So this middle player here will drive the net. So if you had 2 defensemen here, that forces one of these defensemen to take that player to the net. And then your far player would cut across here, and there'd be a little pocket of ice that should open up for that pass or that play up high. So the first one would be, maybe the coach wants the middle player, the player close to the puck, to go to the net. So that would be kind of your middle lane drive. Now, with young players, just to keep it really simple for them, if you had 2 defensemen here like this, you'd have this player going wide with the puck, you'd have your middle player supporting, and you'd have your far player always driving the net. So that would force this D back here, so now you have a D and a forward here, and you've created basically a 2-on-1 with this D and these 2 forwards here. So now you can either make a play high for a shot, this player can take it to the net, and you have action. And then the other thing that happens here too is now you've created what we've all learned as young players, obviously, and as if you're coaching, is that triangle. And now you've got 1 player here, a forward and forward there, and a forward high, and there's that triangle that we're trying to create when we attack a zone. So we're not in a straight line across the ice, we're in a bit of an attack triangle that gives us more options to make plays. So option number 1, if I was working with young players and a young team, I would have the puck carry the puck in wide, my furthest player from the puck go to the net, and my closest player supporting the puck. And then again, that would give you your triangle and some options for those players. So the options would be passing it high here, or passing it across to the net, or getting a shot on net off that drive. The second option would be that middle player driving the net. So our player carries it in wide here, we have our middle player drive the net, and we have our far player come over for support. And again, we have our attack triangle here, and now this player has options of passing it here or making a play to the net. So those would be two really, really simple ways of teaching a little bit of structure on how to get in the zone, spreading out obviously, so players aren't clumped up with the puck, spreading out, having one player drive the net, one player supporting the puck, and one player carrying the puck. And as you get into a higher level, you see a lot of teams now in the NHL where players carry the puck in the middle. So just real quick, not to get too complicated, but now what happens a lot of times is by the red line, we want the puck carrier to be in the middle. So this player carries the puck, and you have your defense here, and now you have a forward here and a forward here. And what that causes is a little kick out on the side, and it really makes it difficult for the D to know which way that forward's going to go with the puck. So you drive down the middle with the puck and then move it to the side and make a play that way as you're driving in. But again, that gets a little bit more into kind of high level, and probably as you're getting into your bantams and your midgets and beyond of adding those different types of attacks. In the D zone, I'm going to make this keep this really, really, really simple. But now if this is our D zone, and let's say the O's are on offense, so we have an O here with the puck, and we have another O down here playing with them. We have another O up here, and we have O defenseman here and an O defenseman here. And if we're the X's, we're going to have one defenseman here. So we'll have a defenseman here. That's our D. We'll probably have another forward here. So another forward down here. We'll have a defenseman here. And then we're going to want our forwards. So our X forwards here and here, who are going to be marking these guys. So now if you look at our D zone, we've got a forward on the D here. We've got a forward on the D here. We've got a defenseman on this forward right here, watching them. And then we've got our battle going on here. So now we've got a 2-on-2. Everyone's got their own player. And if that puck shifts sides, so if this puck goes over to this side over here, odds are this forward's going to go over this way. This defenseman's going to help out. This forward right here that was on the defensive side is going to retract. And probably one of these forwards right here are going to come down. So now we have our O from here. We have our two X's, so our defense and our forward. And then these players right here would come out. So now what would happen is this player that's not involved in the play, they would come out to here. So this player would end up coming out here. Our defense that was down here would end up coming out here. So we have a defense here, and we have our other forward here. So now we have the net front D that went in the corner. We have forward that went in the corner to play on offense. And then we had our other forwards come in to help out. And then these players right here would stay with their defensemen. So really simple, but even at young ages, getting players to know who they're marking or who their players that they're supposed to be around is huge for helping that D zone have a little bit more structure to play in the D zone, obviously, while you're in game. So going through that in practice and just kind of showing players that structure is huge for players understanding where to be in the D zone, which is obviously important. But more importantly than that, who am I watching in the D zone? Who are the players that I'm responsible for in the D zone? And kind of going through that in a simple way with players is huge for team success, obviously. All right, one other thing. We're gonna finish off here with a couple of questions that I had about parents, and just basically how parents can dictate or help or hinder their player, their son or daughter. And I think one thing that's really, really clear, we all know this, but there's a really fine line between cheering and being enthusiastic at a game and being annoying, over the top, and too loud and too vocal. Everyone who's watched their own player play gets frustrated by their own son or daughter, by them not playing hard or them not skating hard or them missing a shot or things like that. But communicating that in a loud way or yelling it out or being obnoxious about it, whether it's your child or another child from your team or another team, don't do that. And my advice is this. So a lot of times I've gone to a lot of games to watch a lot of players play. And there are times when I walk in the arena and within a minute or two watching a little bit of the game, I can tell exactly which parent is associated with which player. I can tell exactly which group of parents are associated with which team. And that's easy because they're cheering for that team, which is fine. But you can tell right away by the parent group and how they're acting on how that team's going to perform on the ice. And this is what I mean by that. If you have a parent group in the stands that are very vocal and loud and yelling and not being encouraging, all right, especially at the young ages, because you'll hear parents that a kid will get knocked down from the other team and they're cheering for their team because they just knocked them down. The ref will make a bad call and you'll hear the parents yell and scream at the ref that was a terrible call. And most often, that team is going to be a little bit scrambly, a little bit more agitated, a little bit more fired up, and probably taking more penalties and maybe not playing the right way. The other thing I look at a lot of times too is the coach. If the coach on the bench is yelling and screaming and yelling at the refs and they're animated, guaranteed their team is going to be animated. They're going to be yelling, they're going to be screaming, they're going to be talking back to the refs and the officials. So I think as a coach, being as calm as you can is huge. I think as a parent, being supportive and positive is number one, and really trying to keep a lot of those comments, those negative comments, to yourself. At the end of the day, you got to remember, if you're watching minor hockey, these are young boys and girls that are 6, 7, 8, 9, 15, 16 years old. They're young. And yes, they can control their actions, but at the end of the day, yelling and screaming and getting on players is ridiculous to me, especially minor hockey. And it's not doing any help. And at the end of the day, I believe that you are hurting your specific player, so your son or daughter, more than anything else. Because if you're known as that parent who's vocal, crazy, yelling all the time, animated, arms in the air, smacking the glass, that's going to get directly related back to your son or daughter. And especially as they get older, and maybe they have an opportunity to play junior hockey, or maybe they have an opportunity to get a scholarship or play college hockey. Scouts, coaches, managers, all this stuff, they're going to notice that stuff right away. And that's a check mark against that player, unfortunately. And like I said, to begin this, I've walked into arenas before, and within a minute or two, watching a couple of shifts, I can tell exactly who that parent is. And I've had many tough conversations with parents where I said, you can't act like this. You're not doing your son or daughter any favors by being so animated. I know you're passionate, I know you love your kid, I know you want what's best for your kid, but you can't act like that, because at the end of the day, it reflects poorly on you as a parent, but it also reflects poorly on your son or daughter, and I don't think they asked for that. So really be conscious of that, parents, when you're watching games, and coaches, be conscious of your demeanor on the bench. There's nothing wrong with being encouraging, supporting your team, and being a voice on the bench, but yelling, being animated, cheering, chirping other players, those are things that aren't going to help your team's success for sure, and are going to only cause your team to get more agitated and more aggravated and more on edge. And when you have teams that play on the edge like that, that's going to cause more penalties, more probably disgraceful play as far as chirping back at referees or chirping back at other teams. And obviously, those are things we want to try to get out of the game, rather than enhancing that. So keep that in mind, kind of as you are going to the rink as well. And there was one more that I had here. I think it was from Steven. This is a really good one. My son is not getting a lot of ice time, and I'm wondering if I should talk to the coach or send an email to the coach, or should I have my son do it? And I think at most ages, so even at like 7, 8, 9, I know they're young, but I would definitely have a conversation with my son or daughter before I ever addressed any coach. And I would ask them, how did you feel about the game? How'd it go? Maybe I feel like my son didn't get a lot of ice time, or my daughter didn't get put out on the power play. But I want to talk to them first and see how they felt. And sometimes it was fine. Game was good. I thought we played well. Okay. Then it's more your issue than it is their issue. Meaning your son or daughter's fine with it, and you're the one with the issue with it. So maybe we should park it and let's see how next game goes and go from there. If your son or daughter is disappointed, discouraged because they're not getting ice time and they're rattled by that, then I feel that's a conversation that you need to have with your son or daughter. First of all, talk to them about it and give them the tools to be able to address it. Meaning, can your son or daughter go and talk to the coach? And maybe you're there and maybe you do a little bit of role playing beforehand and go through that scenario with your son or daughter. But can they go in maybe with you beside them and they address that and say, hey, coach, I just need to know what I need to do to get more ice time. Or, hey, coach, what do I need to do to get on the power play? And have them start that dialogue. And for me, this isn't about hockey. This is more about life. And the more we can get our young players into those situations where they have to problem solve and they have to figure out the answers and they have to go get those answers, the better and the easier it's going to be for them as they move on. Whether that's with a boss they have down the road or a partner that they have down the road or another coach that they have down the road, it's going to be easier and easier as they go through this. So I strongly encourage parents to help your players get ready to talk to their coaches. And whether that's a thank you after the game, hey, thanks, coach, because anybody who's coached knows that it's a thankless job and it takes a lot of time and energy. So just having that opportunity to say thank you to a coach, that's a win for me for a parent for sure. And then on the flip side of that, when things aren't going well, can your child go and talk to that coach? And trust me, I know it's nerve-wracking, and no young 8, 9, 10-year-old wants to go talk to their coach about ice time. No 15, 16, 20-year-old wants to go talk to their coach about ice time. But the more they do it, the easier it gets. And you're not going in stomping your fist and saying, I need more ice time. Why am I not getting ice time? But I think going in and asking, what do I need to do better? What do I need to do better to play more? What do I need to do? What do I need to get better at in order to be able to play on the power play or play on the penalty kill? I think those are important questions, and I think any child is more than capable of asking those questions. And whether you're beside them, helping them through it a little bit, that'll get easier and easier. And then they're the ones that can address those issues as they come up, especially as they get older, in a variety of different situations. So I strongly suggest, and I love that question. I believe it was from Steve. I love it. Try to get your son or daughter to be the one kind of leading that charge a little bit and being the one that's in that conversation or in that meeting. I strongly recommend against sending an email after a game or a text message after a game when you're upset or you're rattled about what happened that game. And if you are about to send one, just turn the tables around that you're the coach. And maybe you're upset that you lost, you're upset that half your team didn't play well, and now you're getting an email from a parent who's berating you because their son or daughter didn't play and they only played 7 minutes when the other players played 15, and so just kind of role reverse it a little bit and maybe wait a little and take some time to really think about it and get a better thought process in place. And I strongly recommend getting your son or daughter involved in it. There's countless times I've talked to parents about issues that they have with the coach, and one of the questions I ask, well, have you talked to your son about this? No, not yet. Well, they're the one playing. They're the one who's getting directly affected by this. How do they feel about it? Do they have an issue with it? And sometimes they don't. Sometimes the player doesn't have an issue, or sometimes the player knows why they got sat. The coach told me 3 times not to carry the puck over the blue line and just to chip it in, and I did it again, so he sat me. You didn't know that. You weren't on the bench. You didn't know exactly what happened, but the coach communicated it to them, told them, hey, if you do this again, I'm going to have to take a shift away from you or the rest of the period away from you. And they go and they repeat the same mistake again, and then it's addressed by the coach, and then the parents get upset about it. So I think it's a little bit work. I think it's really important for parents to have that dialogue with their players and then focus on helping your player deal with those situations a little bit better. So thanks again for the questions. I really appreciate everyone who checked in today. Thank you very much. And this is something that we've done in the past and I'd like to continue to do. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them in the comments on YouTube at National Skill Development Association, or you can hit us up on Instagram as well at NSDA Hockey, or on Facebook at National Skill Development Association as well. We've got a ton of new videos coming out, and we're trying to shoot videos all the time. And if you have anything that you'd like to see, any specific skill videos or even coaching tips or drills that you'd like to see done on video, or even something like this, just a quick post that I can put up on a drill that I can drop that addresses certain issues that you have in your practice or certain skills that you'd like to see incorporated in your drills or in your practice, let us know, and we're here to help, and we want to be a resource for you coaches, parents, and players to hopefully improve your game and obviously get better and reach your goals in hockey. So once again, thanks a lot for checking in, and best of luck with playoffs and tryouts and all that other good stuff that's coming up. Thank you.